Hello and welcome to Resonance X. Today I'm here with a special guest, Emma Zia. Emma, welcome to the show.
Hi, Raymond. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. Thanks for joining me. So, Emma, I have some notes over here to my side that I'm going to use to help guide us through this conversation. But, before we get into the book, before we get into the patterns, before we get into the work you do with high performers, my question is, I want to get to the human version of you and what it is that you do, right? And when did pressure stop being just pressure for you and become information?
I had my first shift in my relationship to pressure when I was 12 years old, which might sound backwards to many people. And I've had many pressure moments since then. But I essentially grew up feeling intense internal pressure that I wasn't supposed to be here. And I don't know if you felt this or anyone listening has felt this, but it's that kind of pressure where you're suffering inside and no one else can see it. And that almost makes it worse.
Yes.
Because no one knew the battle that I was going through. And every single day I had the thought loop in my head when I was a child of, if I wasn't here anymore, maybe only then people would know that I existed in the first place. So I essentially spent a lot of my childhood feeling very invisible. I spent my school days feeling like I was just a waste of space. And it's almost like I knew that there was a reason I was here, but I couldn't find it. And so there was this constant conflict, and it was that inner conflict that created the pressure and the friction. And then there was this one day where it really reached its pinnacle. I was 12 years old. I had just finished the school day. I remember so clearly the bell rang and I ran home. I ran upstairs. I started crying my eyes out. And I grabbed my journal and I grabbed my pen and I wrote in capital letters across the top of the page, "Universe, please make me fit in." That's all I wanted. I just wanted to fit in. That was it. And in that moment, something very profound happened that completely changed how I live my life moving forward. In that moment, I heard two voices in my head. One was a very contracting voice, the most familiar voice, the voice that said, "You're not supposed to be here. You're not enough. You're invisible. No one sees you. You're a waste of space," all of that. But then I heard this other voice come through that was very steady, very quiet, very confident, that said, "There is a version of you that isn't in this pain. You just need to find her." And in that moment, I realized that I was faced with a choice, that I could choose which voice to listen to. Will I listen to the voice that felt contracting and small and familiar, or the one that said, there is a life available where you can experience joy, where you do belong, where you do feel fulfilled, where you do feel loved, where you do feel seen, where you do feel valuable? And so I chose to listen to that voice, and I let that voice be the leading energy in my life. And every time I felt that conflict between those two voices, the one that said, "I can't, I shouldn't, I won't," and then the one that said, "You can, you will, you can become," I chose to listen to the expansive voice. And I realized that every single time that I felt the pressure, internal or external, and I chose to listen to the expansive voice, I let it build me. The pressure didn't break me. It was actually the friction point I needed to make the choice between those two different versions of myself. And I can say wholeheartedly that if I didn't follow that expansive voice and keep being brave enough to keep choosing that, I wouldn't be sitting here in front of you today.
So, Emma, Dr. Seuss has a famous quote that says, "Why fit in when you were born to stand out?" Does that resonate with you?
Oh, I'm realizing it now. Yeah, I realize that now. Yeah.
What do you think that pressure was trying to tell you? Was it trying to force movement? Was it trying to force realization? Was it just navigation?
Honestly, all of the above. Looking back on it, and I've done a lot of self-reflection and deep self-discovery, that was very intentional for me to experience. I was meant to feel like I didn't fit in. I was meant to feel like I didn't belong. I was meant to feel unseen, because experiencing all of that also held the potential for the opposite. And so now I'm at a place in my life where I understand that I might not fit into the way that society thinks, because it's more of a thinking thing. I look like I fit in, I speak like I fit in. It's more of the way that I see the world, operate in the world, the way that I'm a woman between worlds, as it were, because I'm one foot in metaphysics, one foot in the mainstream. So I feel for me that I almost needed to feel like I didn't fit in, because I'm here to create something that doesn't fit into the way that life is. And I think a lot of people that don't feel like they belong, that is the purpose of it, is that if we fitted into society as it is, we wouldn't be here to progress it. We wouldn't be here to innovate. And this is, entrepreneurs, creators, visionaries, we all feel this. I think it's a very common theme between that type of person, is that we don't fit into what exists because we're here to create something different. So it was all very intentional.
What would you tell a 12-year-old kid who feels how you felt when you were 12 today?
First, I would validate the feelings. I would never tell them that what they were feeling wasn't real. If they said they felt like they didn't fit in and they didn't belong and they weren't supposed to be here, I would say that's valid. There's something in that. Like, that is a seed of potential for a bigger purpose, for your contribution to humanity. So let's pull on that thread a little bit. Let's see what that pain has the power to become. I would also say the very logical and objective part of me is that you are here for a reason. You exist. So there is something here, and you just need to have the bravery to continue seeing what that could become. And in that moment where I felt that pressure that I shouldn't be here, I remember thinking, if there is even a 1% chance that I could enjoy my life on this planet, I may as well do whatever it takes to figure out what that could be. And so all you need is just that 1%.
Okay, I think I'm going to ask the question the right way. How was this an immediate translation of understanding, or did it take you a minute to realize like what was actually happening and what you were trying to tell yourself, what these voices were talking about? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it would be a bit of both. In that moment, something guided me to trust. It's almost like something beyond my 12-year-old brain could understand what that voice was showing me, and that I needed to trust that. Even if I couldn't understand the full picture, or I couldn't understand what choosing to listen to that voice would lead me into in my adult life, there was just this knowing and this nudge that I needed to follow it in that moment. And so there was a trust there. But I would say the understanding of why I felt that way and what I'm here to do now has come in time and looking back.
So let's talk about metaphysical, right? Not everybody is in one world and another world at the same time. A lot of people are black and white, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to talk about the gray area. From this point, you've talked about redefining what pressure actually is from the metaphysical perspective. Like, I'd love to go there. What does that mean? How do you define it? How do you hold it? How do you listen to it? Because, you're 12 years old having these conversations in your head. I'm not saying other 12-year-olds aren't, but you're very conscious and you have that memory. I don't remember what I was thinking. I can tell you what I was doing when I was 12, but I can't remember what I was thinking at that time.
Yeah. So I grew up in a metaphysical family. So I come from a family of healers and psychics. So for me, I had a very unconventional upbringing. And from the outside, you would look at my family and think we're totally normal, totally mainstream and all of that. But inside the house, we're talking about consciousness, healing intelligence, energy. I had very strong premonition and precognition when I was younger. So for as long as I can remember, I was living between worlds. It almost feels like a glitch. I would see things before they would happen in reality, and then they would happen and everyone would be like, Emma, you literally told us about that last week. It was so many moments of me not quite understanding what I was going through, but just knowing that based off of my family's reactions, it wasn't a common thing for a child to be so glitching in the universe, as it were. So I obviously grew up in the right family. They had an understanding. They really supported the way that I was, but I didn't understand. So that's what led me essentially to feeling like I don't know how I fit in this world. One thing with me that I've always had is I communicate with people's energy. So even when I was a child or when I was at school, even if someone was saying something, I'm listening and speaking to your energy. And so if someone was saying something with their words, but their energy was communicating something different, it was very confusing to me because I'd be like, why are you saying that when I know that the truth is actually something different? So there was a lot of confusion for me kind of growing up. But I've always had this connection to this other world. I've always been able to receive information that feels like it comes out of nowhere. Now I understand that as extrasensory perception. So it's just an advanced form of perception that we all have. It's a very natural aspect of human functioning. There is nothing that is supernatural about it, except for the fact that it is super natural. It's very natural. But because of traditional school systems and the way the world operates, we're very, prefrontal cortex driven. So we basically suppress this when we enter the school system. And so people lose touch with that part, whereas I never lost touch with it. So I've always had these moments where I've received information and it's just this deeper knowing and sense that that is the truth.
So you mentioned something about the way the world is, or, the way we enter into school system for the most part, no matter which country you're in. And I feel like we are bred into resistance, right? Like we are told, we are educated, we are limited, we are, forced beliefs versus just, being human being versus human doing, right? And that's a whole nother conversation we can have another time, but bringing the metaphysical into it and in your work that you do and how you have evolved into who you are today, what are some ways that people can embrace the metaphysical, right? Without fighting science, for lack of a better term.
Absolutely. And this is the age-old debate, is a lot of scientists don't accept metaphysics. But technically speaking, because metaphysics is the study of existence, consciousness, and reality, you can't do anything without metaphysics. It is the philosophy behind everything that we do and how we interact with life and reality and how we be. So it's quite comical in that sense. But I truly believe that there's a lot about this life experience that we're not supposed to understand through the limitation of the human mind. So even speaking about, metaphysics or the purpose of life or what is a soul, what is a spirit, who are we? That age-old question, who are we? Are we ever supposed to truly know? Can the human mind ever actually comprehend the immensity of who we are? Because the way that I see it is I see everything as an experience of consciousness. And you have non-local consciousness, which means it is consciousness which is not confined to space and time. And then you have local consciousness, which is consciousness that is confined to space and time. This is third dimensional reality. This is us as humans. We are a localized perspective of consciousness. And so in order for people to understand the metaphysical perspective on things, I always like to say it's more about understanding the bigger picture. It's zooming out. Because what happens, and this is where a lot of people fear metaphysics or extrasensory perception or the unseen, is that we're so familiar and habituated with our own localized perspective of what life is, who we are, how reality operates, that anything outside of that we can't quite understand. Whereas what I like to do is I like to zoom out and see it from the bigger picture. What if we are all just consciousness experiencing reality for the purpose of expansion? And that is it. And consciousness is just information that vibrates. And then we can look at it and experience it from a human perspective, from that localized perspective, because that's intentional. We're limited by design, so we can experience a human life. But we can also understand it from a wider perspective by practicing being awareness. Awareness being oneness. When we go into meditation and we actually let go of the interference of the identity, the monkey mind, the overthinking, the analyzing, the needing to understand, the needing to justify. When we actually expand into just being awareness, we experience oneness, and separation doesn't occur in that place. So from that place, we can understand how we are all interconnected in one entire system, but we experience reality both from the non-local perspective, which is universal, God consciousness, source consciousness, all that is, and from the human perspective, which is limited.
So 3D versus 5D, 3D being the human experience, 5D being higher level consciousness.
I personally wouldn't say 5D just because dimensions are infinite. So it's just multi-dimensions.
Okay.
5D is just one aspect where I've noticed that people speak about 5D most common, but I think that's just because it's the dimension that's most easy to understand and access from the third dimensional perspective.
Interesting. Okay. So just another buzzword being thrown around the internet.
Yes, because humans like to understand. So I get it. We like to understand, but also I think if you just expand beyond that, you'll understand that all dimensions are simultaneous and happening at the same time, and you don't actually need to segment it in the same way that we do from the 3D perspective.
Okay, so can we talk about integration? How do you integrate this? Right? How do you take these feelings, these conversations in your head, these emotions, often complex emotions, the resistance, right, that we're again instilled with as children? How do you integrate this to start evolving, to start growing, to start changing?
Love this question. I'm going to answer it in this way. The first place to start and the most powerful place to start is to understand that you are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are not your physical sensations. All of that is just an experience that you are noticing as a being of awareness. And we know this because if you were your thoughts, as soon as you had a thought come in and then leave, you would disappear with it. So what I like to do is I like to get people to see themselves as the ever-present sky. And the clouds are your thoughts, your emotions, your temporary experiences, your physical sensations. They're there, they're real, they are moving, but they are all temporary. Behind that is the sky. The sky is always there. It is ever present. That is who you are as a being of awareness. So when it comes to integration, the first thing or the most powerful stance to take is to understand that all of that is just paint on your blank canvas, but it's not permanent. It is temporary, and it's not who you are. It's just who you've been rehearsing who to be. So your thoughts, your emotions, and your physical sensations are typically recycled from past experience. So when you can practice witnessing your thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations without attaching to them, without becoming them, without avoiding them, simply just observing them all existing, there is this detachment that takes place, or better put, this non-attachment, because detachment can sometimes feel like this pushing away. Non-attachment is allowing it all to exist without being attached to it. Resistance, all resistance that you will ever experience in your life, is referencing that there is an attachment present. If there is resistance in your life, it means that you are attached to a story, a thought, a belief, an identity, a self-concept, a person. And so you're not allowing life to naturally move, because life is always moving. The clouds are always moving. Thoughts are always moving. Emotions are always moving. Physical sensations are always moving. So when there is resistance, there is something that you are unknowingly or knowingly holding on to that's creating this internal conflict, because reality naturally wants to move and change without your interference. If you just rested as awareness, everything would be changing. You would never feel the need to fix yourself or to heal yourself or to change yourself, because change is always constantly happening anyway. It's not about how do I get from A to Z. I know that I want to do this for my life, or I'm having this calling towards this, but how do I get there? It's never a question about how. It's more of a question of what can I surrender deeper into? What attachments am I ready to let go of? And when you do that, you will naturally flow downstream with more ease and effortlessness into your truth.
How do you embrace that fluidity?
It comes with releasing control. And that
An
is one of the
illusion we all have.
hardest things. Yeah. That is one of the hardest things for humans to do. I experienced this firsthand. My first experience really of surrendering, I remember I was in a Vipassana meditation. Vipassana is, or the one that I did, was very much just about understanding that the sounds you hear are just sounds. So don't apply meaning to it. The feelings you feel are just feelings. Don't apply meaning to it. The taste you're experiencing is just a taste. It's just an experience. You don't need to put a meaning to it. And when I remember when I was practicing this meditation, my whole body started to shake, because in that moment I was letting go of the meaning that I assigned to my experiences, my sensory experiences. And so in that moment, I was beginning to release the reins I had over my identity. And my nervous system went into oh my God, what is happening? Something is not safe yet. And my whole body was shaking. And I just trusted the process. And I just kept exhaling and breathing myself through it. And I remember coming out of that meditation thinking, I don't really know who I am right now. And that is the most powerful place to be. Because as they say in Zen Buddhism or a lot of these spiritual traditions, inner emptiness is what allows you to connect with your greater essence. When you connect with your greater essence, your non-physical expression of self, there is no fear. There is no resistance. There is only flow that can exist in that place, because you're existing as pure presence, which is your natural state of being. But we are in a world that values intellect, that values control, forcefulness, a need to hustle or effort your way into things. So we don't exist in a paradigm yet. And I say yet because this is changing. It's actually breaking right now. I did a video on this today. We don't exist in a paradigm yet where people naturally operate from this state of flow, trust, and presence. And it's just because of how we've been socialized into this reality. Because if we were all connected with that presence, that flow, deep self-trust, awareness, natural integration, then certain people, organizations, and institutions would not be able to have control over us. So it's all a control piece. It's a hierarchy piece. It's a power piece. It's a status piece. But we're seeing this collapse right in front of our eyes, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, I love it. There's so much change happening that most people are not seeing. It's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you have a book coming out. I'd love to hear a little bit about that book and how it came to be, why you wrote it, who it's for. And I know that you have a framework in the form of patterns. I'd love to learn more about all of that.
Absolutely. So the book starts with my story that I told you, 2 voices, 1 choice. It was about recognizing that it's in the moments that we feel pressure that the choice becomes available. Do we listen to the contracted version of ourselves that is familiar, small, safe, or the expansive version, which is the version of us we've always known deep down is possible to become, but we might not have had that voice come through had we not experienced the pressure of needing to choose. So pressure is actually where those 2 voices become very clear. Now, in terms of pressure itself, in the book, which is called Power Under Pressure, I've actually got it here. This is the author copy, but I can show on the screen.
I love it.
It's got the little author ribbon on it. But I reframe pressure as our personal curriculum. Because I truly believe it's the moments that we feel the most pressure that we are forced into this surrender. And that's an oxymoron, forced into surrender, but it's true. Have you ever had, or anyone listening, ever had a moment where you've been trying to make something work no matter what you do, no matter what you say? It just doesn't work. You are just hitting your head against a brick wall. And in that moment, you have no choice but to surrender.
Guilty.
I think every entrepreneur has experienced this, where we're like, oh my God, I'm trying to control something. And then you have this moment where you surrender and then something shifts, whether it is the clarity comes through, the insight makes sense, something shifts in your external reality, the team member leaves or the business partner. It happens without us understanding how, but there is a shift that happens when we surrender. And so I reframe pressure as our personal curriculum, much like a PlayStation game, where every level you play, you have to complete the level before you move on to the next one. That is how I see pressure. Pressure always appears very strategically from reality when we are ready to see, hear, or experience something for our own growth and evolution. But what happens is because we lack awareness in our society, we don't see it as an intentional lesson or opportunity for wisdom or an opportunity for breakthrough. We see it as something is going wrong. And that in and of itself is what is wrong. The fact that we see pressure as something wrong. So I reframe it as our personal curriculum. And I also talk about with these two voices of the contractor and the expander, I speak about how they are essentially entities in and of themselves. Because the contractor, for example, the version of you that's always said you're not enough, you're not valuable, you can't do this, whatever it is, that has become so familiar that it has such an energetic pull that will, almost like a gravitational pull, it will start to pull in everything that confirms that bias because that entity wants to keep itself going. It wants to keep itself alive. And this is why change feels so hard. So when we're at those moments of pressure, whether it's a pivotal decision or a breakthrough opportunity or a performance or whatever it may be, personal collapse, relationship breakdown, breakthrough, whatever it may be, that's where we have the choice to stop the momentum of the version of ourselves that's keeping ourselves small and contracted. But because it's got so much momentum, we have to put so much of our attention and energy into a version of ourselves that we've never even met yet, that the world hasn't even met yet. But we have to trust that there is a version of us that we are becoming, and that moment of pressure is where we choose to continue stepping into that version of ourselves. And so pressure gives us that choice point. So what I've observed over the last 9 years working with founders, leaders, business owners, entrepreneurs, and high performers is I've managed to decode 6 main patterns that run automatically and invisibly when pressure arrives that can actually keep us locked in that old contracted version of ourselves. Do you want me to go through briefly what each one is?
Yeah, why not? Sure.
So the first 3 are the ones that are outward focused. They are excessive in nature. When pressure arrives, they want to push more. They want to do more. The first one is the imposter pattern. Now, I'm sure you or everyone listening has experienced that imposter feeling
100%.
many times. So with the imposter pattern in the book, this fundamentally comes from the belief that who you are is not enough. And I separate it into the imposter who inflates and the imposter who dims. So if you inflate, you typically will default into someone who almost projects this version of yourself that is ahead of where you actually are. You see this a lot on social media. I've had a lot of clients that on social media, you think they're absolutely smashing it. They come to me, they sit in front of me, they're like, Emma, I've got no idea what I'm doing. I'm pretending, I'm faking it. What do I do, right? So that is like an inflator. They project that they are further along than where they are. But what happens with the inflator is it costs you your reputation because typically you will struggle to deliver on what you actually said you would do or who you said you are because that's not who you are. You're not operating from your current level. You're trying to operate from a level ahead of where you are. Then you've got the dimmer. This is the imposter who undersells themselves. This is the one who stands in a room and they know they are capable. They know they've got what it takes. They know that they could probably do a better job than 90% of the people that they see online or in the room doing what they want to do. But they fear so much about stepping into that success because it will expose that they are not enough. But either way, the inflator or the dimmer ties back to that belief. Then you've got the overdrive pattern, the second pattern. This is the entrepreneur or high performer who, when pressure hits, they do more. They take on more. They work longer. They don't stop. They've got this constant fear that they are always behind. And no matter what they do, they can't seem to get enough done. I know a lot of people that have this. When I was writing the book, I was thinking of clients and friends and everything I know that are part of these patterns. With the overdrive pattern, it derives from the belief that your worth is tied to your output. So I mean, you can obviously get the book and read the breakdown in there, but a huge cost, a hidden cost of this with entrepreneurs is that the business will always rely on them because they always need to be doing something, because if they step up and out, they haven't got their worth. They're not seen as worthy. So that's
they build themselves a prison. It's very common.
Yeah. And they'll find more things to do, or unconsciously they will create work that needs to be done, whether that's a team member not pulling their weight or, all of these things, because they need to be doing in order to feel worthy. Then you've got the chaos pattern. Chaos is driven by the belief that staying with something long term is not safe. So predictability is not safe. The chaos pattern will run in someone who has shiny object syndrome. Again, a lot of entrepreneurs have this. You start something and then you don't see it all the way through to fruition before you start the next thing. And then you start the next thing. You have a million ideas and hardly any of them get executed. With this, the hidden cost is reputation, sustainable success, all of those things. Again, it breaks it down further in the book. Then the next three patterns are the opposite. So these are the deficient patterns. These are the ones that when pressure hits, you shut down or you pull back. The first one is the fortress pattern. This is the person who feels that letting people in is a weakness. So they put up these walls. They do everything alone. They're that person where people look at them and say, they don't need me. They're fine. They've got it handled. Because that is how they project themselves outwardly, because they believe that if anyone saw that they were struggling, that would be weakness. Or if anyone saw that they were, again, struggling, then they would lose authority. So this is the leader who doesn't let anyone in, or who doesn't let them see when they are struggling. And this obviously blocks out support, which is a huge part of building impact, legacy, business. It is a collaboration experience. Then after that, you've got the freeze pattern. Freeze doesn't move. So with freeze, unconsciously, every choice seems to carry catastrophic consequences. So this is the type of person that will run the scenarios in their head 100 times over and still not make a decision. And so the decision is made for them. The team member leaves, the partner leaves, something happens. They are never actually making the decision, because the responsibility of making the choice and then experiencing unwanted consequences is too high of a risk for them to actually do that. But then they miss out on opportunity. They miss out on, things that should go to them that actually go to other people, because they wait too long to actually move. Then you've got the last one, which is the control pattern. Pretty self-explanatory. We spoke about control before. This is very common. And this is really about not allowing yourself to take a risk. Everything has to be funneled through you. And similar to the overdrive, this is where the team won't pull their weight, or people won't be independent thinkers in a positive way in a company, because you're always needed to jump in and fix it or complete the work or whatever it might be. So your team aren't necessarily working as a independent mechanism without you. You are always needed because you have this unconscious need to be in control. But then the pressure you feel with this is that you must take risks in order to scale, in order to create bigger impact, in order to go bigger. You have to take risks. You have to release the grip. And so that is what someone running the control pattern will really struggle with, is they suffocate their own growth and scalability because they're too afraid to let go and trust. So those are the 6 patterns. But in the book, it goes through the costs that each of these have on your decisions, your performance, your success. And it also gives you reflection questions, so you can go through it yourself and really unpack it so you can break through.
I love it. It's fantastic. Thanks for walking us through those. How did you evolve when you came up with this framework and the set of patterns, drafted your book, redrafted your book, probably redrafted your book again, and here you are today? How did you evolve, or where did you find clarity?
Gosh, you know me so well just from saying that. Like, yes, I redrafted. So I actually ended up writing 3 books, and The thing with me is I have so much to say, so much information, so many perspectives that I could share on one topic, that the hardest thing for me was breaking it down into one tiny micro topic. That was the hardest thing. So I actually wrote 3 books. The other 2 I'll probably continue and actually release down the line. But that was the hardest thing for me, is making sure that the book is comprehensive enough that it includes the metaphysical and the more mainstream perspective. But also, I can't go too deep into the metaphysical and then bypass some of the other things. So that was an interesting experience. Whilst I was writing it, I saw multiple patterns being activated, coming up. And honestly, there was so many moments where I was writing it or rewriting it, and I would read the patterns and say, oh my goodness, this is exactly what I'm going through right now. I'm in the control pattern. I'm trying to perfect and not kind of let it leave my hands. I'm too afraid to kind of let it out into the world. The imposter pattern, the chaos, so many different patterns actually came up as I was writing it. So it was really good because the book was almost living through me as I was writing it. I was taking my experience, professional experience over the last 9 years, and writing this framework, but then I was seeing how it was alive and dynamic and living in me as I was going through the process. And I think you might have experienced this. That's one of the most powerful things I've realized about writing a book, is it really is a living piece of work, and it activates and brings out stuff in you as you're doing it.
Yes. Agreed. 100%. It's not static. It's dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think the scariest bit is yet to come because it's not released yet. The scariest bit is letting it fully live and be like, I could have done this differently. I could have done this differently. But it's really helped me get to a place of, this is just one fragment of my body of work. And I actually see myself writing a whole series of books. And it's okay that one book could just be really specific about one thing, and then each book thereafter can be specific. And I do really think it's trusting, circling this back to the beginning of this conversation, it's trusting that I can be seen and I can be okay in that. Because there's definitely been a fear in me of, I've always felt unseen and invisible, and I've wanted to be seen. But then at the same time, that is the biggest thing that scares me. Because what if I'm seen and then people don't like me for who I am? What if people see my work and then they're like, no, this isn't it. And so even starting YouTube recently and things like that, it's really like I've broken out of my shell, and writing the book was a huge catalyst in that. I feel like I've really been behind the scenes for most of my career, and now I'm actually putting myself out online. I'm building a brand, I'm writing a book, and I'm like, wow, like, and so it's bringing up all these fears around being seen, but that is part of the process, right? We have to lean into the fear and move through it.
So that really resonates with me, because I've spent, up until 2020, I spent 30 plus years in the product business. I was never the actor or the main character, right? I was the director. I was the engineer behind the scenes, designing, engineering, building these products. Like even sales, I outsourced sales, right? In most of my organizations, or we had a sales team and there was a sales leader. That's never what I wanted to do. I was like the marketing and engineering guy. So thinking about visibility, thinking about being seen, especially like for you being 12 years old, having these conversations going on in your head, right? And then moving through, let's just call your 9 years as research for the book, right? These real life experiences, but you're still behind the scenes, right? You're buried. In the world we live in today, I feel like we have 2 buckets. We have creators and consumers, and 99% of people are consuming. They are not creating, right? Which is why writing books, doing podcasts, creating content, being on YouTube is still a massive opportunity with 8 billion plus people in the world today. When did you decide that you were okay with being seen regardless of the outcome?
Very recently. I definitely...
Like the day you created your YouTube channel and made it live, like that recently?
Yeah, like last week, 2 weeks ago. So what I've realized is that every time I try and manufacture my work or my message, meaning I think about it, I might write it down and script it, I might, whatever, it never seems to work. As soon as I just trust my truth, I come back home to myself, I let myself feel exposed, I let myself just breathe and be as I am, things take off. It was the same when I started my business 9 years ago, and I started as psychic consulting because that is just my natural skill with extrasensory perception. But I remember, even though I started it and I had consistent clients, I said to myself, what is my thing? I know I want to help people, I want to guide people, that's natural for me, but how am I going to do it? And my brother said to me, Emma, you're already doing it. You're doing the psychic consulting. That is the thing that you're meant to do. And I went, nope, don't believe you, can't see it, da da da. And then I remember going into another room, realizing that he was right, as much as I didn't want to admit it. And I came out and I said, you're completely right.
I'll send him this clip so he can watch it a few times.
He'll just have it on loop. You were right. And so from that moment, my business just took off like wildfire, word of mouth, because I fully leaned into what I was already doing. And it really taught me that often what comes most natural to us is what we're here to do or express. But because it is so natural, we can't see that that is the thing. It's almost like it's so close to us that we can't see it. It's easier to see something when it's at a distance. So we look elsewhere for the answer. We look at what other people are doing, or we look in books, or we look in podcasts. We try and find ourselves in things outside of ourselves. But then it always leads us back to the same place, which is coming home to ourselves, trusting what we already have. Same thing happened.
But we're fighting that, right? Yeah. Like that's a constant battle.
Yeah. And so a couple of weeks ago, I just got told in my meditation, do a YouTube reading tomorrow. Never done a reading I don't know who I'm speaking to. I can sit down one-to-one, tune in automatically. I've done group readings where I'm one-to-one, but in a group, totally okay. YouTube, one-to-many, not knowing who's going to what, like it was a completely different experience, but I got told in my meditation to do it. So I woke up on the Friday, recorded the video. I was like, I've got no idea what I'm doing. I will just post it and I'll take it down on Sunday. On Sunday, I opened YouTube, I went to take it down and I went, 30,000 views. I was like, what? I had people messaging me. I had opportunities come through, new clients book in. I was like, you could not have told me that video was going to be the thing that took off my channel. And towards the end of last year, I decided to put a focus on videos because I love speaking and I actually love media and creating. None of them got like any traction because I was thinking too much about it. I wasn't in my truth. I wasn't in my, better put, it's not that I wasn't in my truth. I was speaking my teachings, but I was doing it in a way that wasn't just in flow. I was doing it in a way that was more structured. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but this video I did a couple of weeks ago, it was just me, no edits, me and a camera, just channeling.
I mean, you used the word, you said manufactured, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so the opportunities that have even come in the last couple of weeks has blown my mind. This is one of them. We connected through YouTube, I believe.
Yeah.
So it's made me realize that every time I just choose myself and I trust not only what I naturally do, but also in the way that I naturally do it. So for me, being more stripped back, no edits, just me and the camera, just having a chat. That is always when things seem to take off. And it's just another bit of evidence that is what we're here to do.
So in your world, this is what I'm hearing. Tell me if I'm right or wrong. Like you're looking at what pressure reveals, right? And then that becomes like a North Star. In my world, in the resonance world that I'm building, I'm looking at what alignment restores. And for me, that came out of a time when I kept asking a question. In one of my previous podcasts that I ran a few years ago, I would ask my guests this question: what do you do when you don't know what to do? And I was never really satisfied with an answer. Okay. I got a lot of answers, by the way, like I did 200 episodes of that podcast, well over a lot of answers. A lot of them were the same, very generic, right? So for me, it was this like fight for alignment, because it wasn't until the pandemic happened that I realized how how out of alignment I had been my entire life, right? I was manufacturing everything,
Mm.
businesses, relationships, friendships, all because like there was this massive piece of me that didn't have peace from how I grew up in the environment that I was in, right? It was always this survival mode, regardless of the achievements or the performance or how much money. I never got out of survival into thrive. I was
Mm-hmm.
just stuck, right? Sitting in neutral, not going anywhere, but the engine was revving. All these things were happening. And, the question that I want to ask you is what changes when someone starts fighting pressure and actually starts listening to it?
Oh, everything. Even what you just said, alignment. Alignment is what we're actually after, because alignment gives us everything that we actually want, not what we think we want, what we actually want, which is what we truly want, what is truly meant for us. Even the things that we don't know that we want, but deep down we want it and we wouldn't admit it out loud. That's what alignment allows you to experience. And even what you just said then about what do you do when you don't know what to do? I think a huge part of that is acceptance. It's about accepting that you don't know in that moment.
And that's okay.
Yes, it's okay that we go off path. It's okay we go out of alignment. It's okay that we don't know what to do every moment of every day. It's okay. And I think that is actually a huge missing piece, that if you just bought in, if every single person just bought in that moment of acceptance of I'm allowing and accepting reality as it is because it is. Otherwise, it would be another way. If you just look at it very logically, it's like how many people avoid reality and try and wish it was something different or try and fight their reality. Why are you fighting your reality? Like, your internal world has created that and it's feeding back to you. Don't fight it. And what I put in the book is it's almost like trying to change your reflection. Trying to change how you look by changing your reflection in the mirror. It's backwards. Yeah. You wouldn't look at the mirror and try and wipe it and, you would change what's standing in front of it. And that's how reality works. So use reality as a feedback loop to show you what's going on in your internal world and then adjust at the source. But adjustment really is acceptance and awareness because change is already happening. So when you accept reality and stop fighting it, you become aware of what's going on in your inner world, you will notice that things start to shift without your efforting of it. It's a completely different way of operating.
Yeah, it's backwards from what we were taught.
Exactly.
What for someone listening who knows they're ambitious, but also knows they're stuck, what's the first honest question they should ask themselves?
Someone who's ambitious, who knows they are stuck. The honest question would be, is what I'm currently doing true for me? Because that requires a level of honesty that most people will never go to because they're too afraid.
I love that. I think that's beautiful.
At every point that you feel that resistance is present, ask yourself, is this true for me? And the thing about resistance, because when you said stuck, I automatically think resistance, because I see resistance as, you've got two people in a rowboat rowing one way and two people in the rowboat rowing the other way. And in the book, I actually talk about resistance because it's one of the blocks to our personal power. And it's simply where a part of you wants to go in a direction and another part of you doesn't feel safe to. And so you go nowhere. It's this internal tug of war and there's no movement. And that's what leads to the feeling of being stuck. So in those moments, you want to really address, is this the right direction for me? Is this true for me? And if it is, what part of me is not feeling safe to go in that direction? Because what you want to do when you feel stuck or when there's resistance is you want to get all parts of you on board in the same direction. I think the mistake we make is we feel that we are one person, entity, one identity, and that could not be further from the truth. We are made up of multiple, if not infinite parts of consciousness to make up this one identity that we call by our name. So that is what that friction is a part of you is ready to go in a direction. Another part of you, it could be your 3-year-old self, it could be your 13-year-old self, it could be your 30-year-old self is saying, but we don't know what that is like. That's not safe because we learned at 3 years old that we can't speak up and still be loved, or we can't take a risk and know that we are safe. So what you've got to do is just bring awareness and acceptance, unconditional loving presence to that part of you. And then you'll find that that part starts to release its grip. And that's when integration happens. Integration is when two or more parts of you are essentially getting on board in the same rowboat in the same direction.
Emma, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's a great place for us to leave all of our listeners. Where can people find you, and when is your book available?
So the book is out on Amazon on the 16th of June. So a couple of weeks, I believe, which is super quick.
Awesome. I'll drop a link below.
Yes. And people can find me on my website, emmazia.com, and it's just spelled ZIA. I'm also on YouTube. I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn, all just under Emma Zia.
Emma, thanks so much for joining me today. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.